Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the TF podcast, where we discuss technology and finance, and that typically revolves around Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and blockchain. My name is Jonathan G. Blanco. I'm excited for my next guest. We've had the pleasure of having him at our past conferences in Seattle, the TF conference, and he is the founder of Trust Wallet. With that, I'd love to welcome Viktor Radchenko. And Viktor, please introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey, Jonathan, it's nice to be here. Yeah, so I'm founder of Trust Wallet, and for the past couple of years, I've been, working on building a better wallet and better access for all the people in the world to access crypto.
Right.
I've been struggling with this myself back in 2017, so I decided that we gotta change this for better.
Yeah, I'd love to just kind of dive into that really quickly. So, how did you first get interested in the crypto space to decide that you wanted to create a wallet?
Yeah, so I think I heard about Bitcoin back in 2012 from a friend who was asking for some help, and he told me about dark web and all of that. So this is where I learned about internet money is Bitcoin. But getting myself dirty, like writing code and stuff, I think it was in 2017. So this is where I learned about ERC20 tokens, and I thought, oh, this is really cool to have like digital assets. But I couldn't find any wallets on mobile, so I'm a mobile developer myself, and I was surprised that nothing existed. So I thought, yeah, let's just build one and make it open source. So this is kind of how I started working on Trust Wallet.
That's great. That's great. And so, before we get to that overall, I know you've been a developer, for pretty much your whole adult. I guess you even did it through adolescence. How did you kind of first get into engineering and then get into the mobile side of things? And tell us a little bit about that, kind of like that earlier journey.
Yeah, so I think I kind of split it in two different lives for me. So one life when I was back in Ukraine, when I was studying, going to university. This is where I started learning about like security and how things work in general. So I wasn't really programming. I was learning how to use specific tooling, writing like some small scripts to like hack systems, but mostly on the white side of things. But then once I left Ukraine, I came to US, and this is where kind of my mindset changed from, like breaking things into actually building them. I think it's totally different vision and thinking, because when you work as a security person, you're trying to like break or like secure something, then you don't really see much value for what you're producing, because you just need to make one mistake to break everything. So when you build, it's more creative in terms of just building different products, and it kind of gives more value to the end person or user.
Yeah, definitely. So you have quite a background in, cybersecurity, and that probably made kind of thinking through the cryptography of this probably felt natural to you, I'm assuming. I'd love if you could kind of talk about how that just plays a factor, right? How secure a wallet in fact needs to be. We hear about things all the time like hacks or people getting losing access to things perhaps because they forget. And I know a lot of that stuff is usually human intervention, more like social hacking or basically just losing information. Can you just touch on that more from a broader strokes level, and then we can kind of talk about how you've solved for some of those things with the Trust Wallet?
Yeah, totally. I think security in general is such a broad term on what it applies to. Yeah, if you think about security of like crypto wallets, and there is lots of things you need to be taken care of, right? So if you think about like centralized wallets, then you need to always make sure that you use email and strong password. You use like 2FAs for all the services that's possible. Then if you think about like decentralized wallets, then you think about having some private keys, recovery phrases, and this is where you got to be really careful because you stored those somewhere on your phone or they've written somewhere on the piece of paper. So like one example would be like, is this secure to have a recovery phrase written on a piece of paper that could be lost pretty easily, right?
Yeah.
So that's why like you want to be careful with those things, which is not related to technology at all, even though pen and paper is also technology in some terms. But you got to be really careful because those pieces could be lost or someone just could throw them away. So this is one part, right? And then there is a security part on mobile, right? Like how do you make sure that security of your devices is secure on OS level? Like how do you make sure iOS do better security? And then how do you make sure you build an app that has all the security built in? You want to make sure you have like all the passcodes, ability to encrypt data, and those kind of layers of security that build up on this. And we see in general, like in crypto, many different ways how people get creative in terms of like hacking users. That comes down mostly to user faults. So either like social engineering, or people just forget about like setting some things that let other people to get advantage of them.
Right, right. And we think about things like two-factor authentication and how people can get even SIM swapped and things like that. From your point of view, and I'm assuming you have a pretty interesting viewpoint to this, is one, why do we still use things like two-factor authentication if it's been known to I guess not be as secure as we think because of people doing things like SIM swapping and the sort.
Yeah, so I think SIM swapping is quite popular in United States. I don't think that's the case in the different countries. But overall, I think the main problem is actually the weak part of all of this is people who are managing your phone number. So whenever you call to like AT&T or T-Mobile, there's people who are responsible for doing verification, and this is the people who are making mistakes when they SIM swap to a wrong user. So usually, what happens, like hackers, they will like contact those people who work at those call centers, and they'll bribe all the people who work there to provide them information when they need it. So they just basically find people they need to attack, and they just tell them like, oh, here's a number you want to SIM swap to.
Got
I
it.
think it's just because you have all these technologies that kind of rely on humans. This is what makes it vulnerable.
Yeah.
So that's why like you want to try to utilize technology that doesn't depend on people. And but at the same time, the drawback, if you want to rely on yourself, then you want to make sure that you do all the security yourself well.
Right. I mean, it's a really interesting point that you put there, right? So, like, a lot of times it's not so much the security of the device or the security of the system that fails; it's the entry point. The point of failure, I guess, being at the human level. And so, with that, you said that what got you really interested is thinking through like smart contracts and so forth. So, I love, from your point of view, what then did you find when you started discovering and thinking about smart contracts, or just how the code essentially can be responsible for the security? Take us through that.
Yeah, totally. So I'll talk a little bit about like, the user experience in crypto and like what are the things kind of I try to do to make it better. So one of the
Yeah.
first thing I was kind of annoying back in 2017 when, I participated in some of the ICOs, and then I wanted to see all the tokens that I owned on my wallet address. But then whenever I wanted to see them, I needed to like put all this information like contract address, decimal value, name, symbol. And that was quite hard to also find it. And it's just too much manual work. And so what I thought would be really cool, what if we like parse the whole blockchain and then just find tokens that associated with specific address. So in that case, what I did is, I basically wrote that logic to parse the whole blockchain. And then whenever you try to use a wallet, it automatically show up all the tokens. So this is what the name of the feature we had. So in this case, you gotta like save time for users and all the frustration they had before. And then you show like so much value now because people know like which tokens they have and how much do they worth. I think you start from like doing small things, small features that help life better, and then you just iterate. And that's kind of what I've been doing for the past 2 years. Like started small and then trying to iterate, add more functionality, just simplifies user experience for the people.
Right. Yeah. Because ultimately, it's all about the user experience. From the user level, they just want to make sure that their tokens are secure, their Bitcoin secure. But all the auto magic stuff, they just want it to be magic as long as it's
Exactly.
safe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you definitely want to find a balance between like security and user experience because there's always going to be a compromise. So I think the goal is always like to make it so it's secure at the same time it's usable for people. Because if you put too much security, then it's not usable, right? So if you have like
Sure.
5 passwords on top of it, by the time you get into your wallet, you like forgot the password that you had before. So you want to make sure it's simple enough, and at the same time, it's important to like have the right message for people. It's not for like storing large amount of value for like hot wallets. So if you
Yeah.
want to use or store like large amount of values, you definitely want to use hardware wallets. It's more like a common sense for that. So I think like communicating that to users is quite important.
Yeah. Uh, in that context, do you consider Trust Wallet to be a harder wallet, or do you how do you where do you put that in that realm?
Yeah, so currently Trust Wallet is a software wallet, which is by itself a hot wallet. So hot wallet means that your wallet has access to the internet, right? Because your phone connected to the internet, they consider it to be a hot wallet automatically. So it is possible to build a software wallet that lives on your phone, but it doesn't require to have internet potentially, because you can potentially connect them and have like two phones which doesn't have internet, and you can make this phone as a cold wallet. So in this
Mhm.
case, your phone never has internet, but it has ability to like sign transactions from another phone that passes you information like QR code, you scan, you sign, and you broadcast to the internet. But yeah, I think by default, most of the software wallets are hot wallets by
Yeah,
default.
just curious in that example that you just gave, would it be the phone that was offline? Would it just be like via Bluetooth? Like it would do a
Yeah,
Bluetooth to the other, and then
pretty
that would
much.
go. Interesting.
Yeah, and like ideally, like if you want to build the right security, you want to make sure the only thing that device does, it has ability to take, like transaction that you want to sign. Make sure you like have a confirmation screen, and that's it. So it doesn't need to have any internet connection whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah, super interesting. Uh, there's people that say things like, not your keys, not your wallet, or we think about things like mass adoption of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency overall. And there seems to be two different schools of thought. There's some people that say like, hey, we need this to have like the best UX ever. And, perhaps there does need to be third party folks that are custodians or so forth for some level of the realm. But then there's other people that are like, hey, no, like everything needs to be on a hard wallet, or everything needs to be outside of it, and we need to just teach everybody to manage their own Bitcoin or manage their own crypto. Where do you sit in that when you think about it? I mean, the both sides have their benefits, but it seems like it would be, for if we're really talking about a mass adoption sort of scenario, it seems like it's probably somewhere in the middle, because most people aren't going to have the capacity to, or the desire, I would think, to really hold all their information. But one point I like to make is that those that do will probably always have a leg up in the system, right? Like just like someone who understands the inner workings of a network, they're going to have a leg up versus someone that's strictly participating in that network. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you. Is that like it's about the balance where you do want to make sure that most people have access to this, and want to make sure it's like seamless for them to onboard. Um, it's I don't think it's possible for all the people to have this 12 phrase and have remember it and never lose it, because the chances that you will lose it is quite high. Like most of the people who brought into Bitcoin back in 2011, like half of them already lost access to the private key just because they forgot their hard drive or something happened to them. I think it would be kind of similar example with here where people on board, they don't pay attention to like new rules that you need to have private keys and stuff. So you definitely want to build a system and security in place where people don't think much about new concepts. So you don't need to explain what a private key is. You can just onboard them and tell like, it's encrypted, here's your password. It's encrypted somewhere maybe in a cloud. And the only one who has access to this is you and your password. So that could make it easier for you because you kind of already own your phone. You trust your software that runs on your like iPhone. So maybe it makes sense to have this kind of lower security for people who doesn't need to store like large amounts of money. So if you store like $300, dollars, I don't think there's need for like high security, high complexity. So you want to make sure it's like simple for the user, and they always have access to this.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Like if you're just getting, if you're using it for minimal transactions and you're for small dollar volumes, yeah, right? It needs to be simple there for you. Um, yeah, so Trust Wallet was acquired by Binance. Was that last year or the year before?
Yeah, it was back in 2018,
2008.
August. So it
Yeah,
was almost 2 years ago.
almost 2 years ago. So I'd love to. How has Trust Wallet changed with the Binance acquisition? And like, I'm assuming that you're still working on Trust Wallet within Binance, or how is that going?
Yeah, totally. No, I'm still like focusing on just making crypto accessible, whatever it takes, right? So, and for the past like 2 years, we made tons of progress. Back in 2007 or 18, when the Trust Wallet got acquired by Binance, at that point we only had like Ethereum wallet, for Ethereum and ERC20 tokens. And then 2 years after, we have like such a fulfilling product with all these functionalities where you can store your Bitcoins, you can store your Ripple, and so many other like assets that's available now. But at the same time, we built lots of new functionalities to like do decentralized exchanges, access to different dApps, and then just like kind of build different functionalities for all the needs that we had. And we also have, fiat on ramp, so it means that people who come, they can also like purchase crypto. And I think those are essential functionalities you want to see in a wallet, where any person come in, he doesn't have any knowledge about crypto. He just like purchased like $50 of crypto, start playing with different dApps, exchanges, and then he just kind of educates himself in that term.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, so what do you kind of see on the horizon? You're a technologist, and you've been having this opportunity to be on the cutting edge. What are you working on right now, or that you can share that you think is really interesting, or how do you think we start to evolve in the space?
Yeah, so I kind of see at this point, so we have kind of two practical, like we have one practical challenge that we're trying to solve is that, okay, we see so many new people coming to Trust Wallet. So in the past, you know, maybe 6 months, we've grown by like 2-3x. So it means that like whenever, we gain users, then we need to like improve our infrastructure because we need to run different nodes that connect to different blockchains. So we want to make sure, people have really reliable service. But at the same time, like gas prices going up by like 10x, by 20, it causes different people to have different issues with like transactions being dropped. So what do we try to do on a practical level to make sure that experience is very smooth and then people pay the least possible for transaction fees? And once you have more users, then you have kind of more problems because there's more transactions in the pool. So we're trying to optimize this, make sure just everything is seamless. But on the other side, like we're trying to invest our time into thinking like how do we improve backup process? How do we make sure that people just come in, press one button, don't think about crypto at all, and just use Bitcoin? And so this is where we kind of spend our time. But at the same time, it's hard to find solutions that are going to be compatible with other wallets and make sure we kind of seamless experience and protocols with other projects. So this is where kind of the challenge is to build that standardized protocol. But besides that, I think it's just focusing on main use cases that we're trying to bring. Purchasing crypto, send, transfer, and just making it easier as possible. So instead of having like this hashes or crypto addresses and having like a friendly name. So those small things that matter for the people, because whenever you tell your friend like, oh, send me to this address, which is my name, and just makes it easier. And
Right.
this is where we spend most of our time, just simplifying those like small functionalities.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I'd love to shift to kind of just what's happening in the world, right? It's been a crazy couple months, just with what's going on with COVID, and then also how just kind of business is operating and run. I'm assuming that you're working from home, and just curious, how has what's been happening globally impacted how you've been operating, in building and growing and so forth?
Yeah, so for me, I was actually in remote for the past like almost 5 years, and then I was running Trust for 2.5 years, and we've been always a remote team. So every single person of our team is located in a different city and location. So I don't think that there is much change in terms of like our internal process as running a company, building a product. We still use the same tooling like GitHub, Slack, all together. So I think those are useful tools to just be collaborative and efficient. I did notice some, like kind of switches, because some people said like, oh, you've been remote for such a long time, probably there is no changes for you. But to be honest, I did notice some changes where I would be less creative just because I do spend less time going out, going for a ride or travel. And those kind of things that gives you more creativity in general. So I do feel that, we're like social humans. We do need to have, interactions with the real life. Otherwise, we getting kind of bored and just into ourselves. But besides that, I think everything seems pretty good. Just some things in terms of like creativity that I noticed for myself. you know.
Yeah, I mean that is a definitely interesting point, right? It's like when your mind can be still, or when you're, going for a walk, you're going for a drive, you're going out, you're doing whatever. That's often when you can be the most creative, because you start to think about what you've been doing throughout your day, or what you're working on, or looking at those problems from a slightly different lens. With what's been going on the global markets, from like the just the overall financial markets and so forth, and I'd love to know what your opinion is, or how you've been thinking about this. Right, there's been so many bailouts, of money, from the Federal Reserve. The stock market has been kind of going up and down. There's unemployment. It seems like there's a lot of uncertainty, and Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are kind of starting to uh, get more awareness, call it, or people are starting to. I think the best way to say it is people are starting to take it a little bit more seriously. Curious on what your thoughts of what you've seen, with conversations you're having, or what you've observed, and just your outlook on that.
Yeah, no, I would say for sure that this is something that never expected to happen at all, right? And this will kind of cause lots of different like rippling effects. There is Fed printing more money, there's more people losing their jobs, and to be honest, I don't know like exactly how economics will work in that case. It definitely will change quite a bit, the whole economical growth, because when you have so many people not having a job, they're not able to pay their mortgages, their payments. Yeah, it will definitely cause many problems. So kind of hard to tell where we'll be going, but whenever there's any crisis happen, there's always so much innovation come out of it, right? Because
Yeah.
people who struggling with some problems, they're like, yeah, let's just find solutions for this. Same thing as there's so many entrepreneurs who's thinking, oh, we're staying home all day, like how are we going to do more efficiently, how are we going to interact with different people? So there's more tooling coming out to like do video conferencing. How do you make sure you see people more often? So there's just so many different ideas that will come out of it. I personally try to use like Oculus Quest for our team meetings, so which is quite exciting because I
Huh.
don't think virtual reality would make sense before as much as it does now, because we're now like all kind of close in this ecosystem, so we need to wait to interact with different people. And virtual reality kind of gives you that sense because you can see different emotions of people, and just fun to hang out there.
That,
But
that
this is only because of this problem that we have.
Right. Yeah. If you might have done that before, it might have seemed different or awkward. So that's super interesting. So you'll actually you'll put on your VR glasses, and you'll have a team meeting in VR.
Yeah, exactly. So
I
it's
love
quite
that.
fun. So
Yeah.
yeah, so what we did the last 2 weeks ago, so we basically went to an app called Alt VR. So it's alternative VR, where you have different rooms. So there's one room where people have comedies. There's another one where people play, cards against humanity. It's just kind of fun to explore, and you see random people just coming up to you. They, just do, jokes and stuff. So it's a very interesting experience. It's still early on in terms of just how it works because quality of the picture is still a little bit low. But I think maybe in like a couple of years it will get so much better, and it will be so more immersive that you wouldn't see the difference between real life and virtual reality.
Yeah. It'll be like the Matrix.
Yeah, pretty much.
Have you watched the Matrix while under quarantine by chance? I actually
No, no.
recommend it.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
a good idea.
I
We'll
watched it the
definitely do
other
that.
day, and I was like, this is really interesting, with the current context. One thing am really curious on your perspective on, being in your cybersecurity, and kind of that background that you have, is what are some things that people should be aware of, as when it comes to how they are, interacting online, or just their overall security. It seems like there is a lot of opportunity for bad actors to take advantage in this moment, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are on how people can be thinking through that, or being aware of it, or things that you might be seeing that people aren't paying attention to.
Yeah, I think the main usually the case is like you want to expose less information in general on the internet, right? So I think this is a basic rule that will work for anyone. So ideally, the way you get hacked when you expose some data. So if you expose your emails, you expose your data about your date of birth, your personal information, Facebook accounts. So this is where all this hackers trying to find, their targets because they have data. If there's a person who doesn't have any information on the internet, not even his email, like there's no way he can even attack him. So I think the basic rule would be not ever expose any information that you can. There's some people, who do like public speaking and stuff, so they definitely expose information. But in general, for most people, the more private you stay in terms of just sharing information, the better for you. And that comes down to, building a software. So you want to make sure your servers are solid and never get hacked. You want to make sure you don't expose anything that's not needed. So only expose those like methods that, people are using.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the basic rule.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, being that you are, you work for essentially the largest and probably most well-known exchange right now, and you're dealing with tokens and a wallet. I'm curious what your thoughts are on just kind of the overall banking system. And what I mean by that is, what do you think it takes for the banking system to start incorporating whether that be cryptocurrency and the Bitcoin, Ethereum, or is it like their own native and digital currencies that they start creating? Like a lot of them are thinking about companies like JP Morgan Chase, or even Bitcoin as a selling mechanism. Curious, what do you think it takes for these companies, or sorry, these institutions, to start thinking about crypto in their context?
Yeah, I think the main challenge for the banking industry in general is that because they have like so many different processes already, they're just not able to catch up with the progress. So
Yeah.
what it means is like, even if they wanted to support crypto, it's just not easy for them to build this infrastructure. Like
Yeah, they have so many
building
old
key
rails they're basing it off of, right?
Yeah, exactly. So even like if you want to build this like key management system that will take so many talents to build this functionality to support so many people, here in the US, for example. So it's just like very difficult for them to make those decisions, at the higher level. And then the decision to build that software is also pretty hard. So it's just probably not innovative in that sense. So I was just chatting with somebody today, and they mentioned about like PayPal, how they were able to like, basically take the whole digital internet money, right? Maybe all the other banks wanted to do it, but at the same time, they just weren't able to catch up with PayPal. PayPal was able to build this like digital money system where you can send it by email, and it just kind of worked for them. Maybe it's the use case with all these financial institutions right now. Just hard to adopt and build technology that changes like pretty often. Yeah, if you look at even the Bitcoin, they've been changing protocol, different format for addresses quite often. So I don't think banks are good with like changing anything.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, Victor, what kind of questions do you have? And so I always like to leave my interviews with one final question, and that is, what question do you have that you want people to be thinking about as they go about their day, as they're adjusting to this new form of life, crypto in general? What would you release to them?
Now, I have a question for you. I
Oh,
think
okay.
it's just like out of blue. What do you think changed since, like we went into like this, form of working from home? Like what kind of habits changed for you personally? What things have you discovered for yourself, like new hobbies, new habits developed?
Yeah. It's funny. That's a great question. I think for me, what I've noticed the most is how similar people are that you might think are at some different sphere than you. And so this is kind of what I mean. So I produce content, and I'm watching things on ESPN, for instance, and they're having a similar conversation to you and I, right? And so it's like, it kind of made me think in this realm of like, hey, like, we're not all as different as we might think when you take out a lot of the layers. So that's kind of been one realization I've had. And so that's actually been really encouraging for me personally, in the thought of how I've been thinking about, producing stuff. Sure, I don't have the audiences that, some of these larger people have, but it's more of like, hey, like, I have the same tools. Why not try the same thing? And so, I've thought about that in other realms, and I do a little bit of coaching and mentoring to some folks. And I've kind of told them the same thing, is like, hey, like, the bar has been adjusted, and so you have this ability now to try things and essentially gain forgiveness that you might not have had in the normal, in the way things used to be, right? So kind of like what you were talking about with the VR, your VR experience, is that you totally recognize that the quality is not as good as you'd like it to be, and you, as you mentioned, like you might not have done it before, but you're willing to forgive it based off of like the new dynamic and the new circumstance. So I think that's one of the first things. The second thing I think I've really paid attention to and noticed is that it's actually just been a good time to reflect on priorities overall. Like I actually haven't been someone that has worked from home. I've always worked from the office. I'm like, I could do this. I could do this. I still want to talk and interact with other people, but I really do think that companies need to have a serious work from home, policy that they think through. And anybody that says like, hey, you're going to just go back to the old ways is probably going to lose employees, because they're going to go to another employer that has more flexibility with that work from home type of scenario. So I think those are kind of like my two big takeaways overall. But it has been a lot of definitely a lot of reflection. I actually, the last thing has been and kind of encouraging to me is that I notice, and I realize this might sound too personal, but I notice that a lot of times when I get stressed out, it's actually myself putting on the pressure on myself, if that makes any sense, right? And so
Yeah, totally.
it's like, here I was thinking that it was these outside things that are giving me the pressure, like, I don't know, family or spouse or work. And it's like, no, it's actually really like my own expectations that I set of myself. And so I've been trying to just kind of figure that out a little bit. It's like, wait a second, it's okay if you don't do things perfectly. Obviously, still try your best, but that's kind of been the fun also. How
Yeah,
about you?
definitely.
How about you?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. Like in terms of habits, I did try a few new things. Like I've been, doing a little bit of like Counter Strike, so a little bit of gaming. Only one game though.
Yeah.
And then I tried to play darts because I found, the dart board. So I've been playing with that a little bit. So it's kind of nice to like explore things that you haven't done before, and
Yeah.
then you realize now that you have it. And like we started, doing a little bit of gardening and stuff. So we're like growing tomatoes at home. Um,
Nice.
Definitely some things that I wouldn't do otherwise. A little bit changing my thinking, but I agree with you regarding like the pressure. It's all about usually problems within yourself on how much you put expectations in terms of what you expect from others.
Yeah, yeah, and sure, and that's not by any means to minimize anybody that does have that external pressure. But yeah, like I said, for me personally, I just noticed that, though, of course, like everybody, I do have external pressures. It's how I've been intaking it, right, or like how I
Yeah.
decided to reflect on that. No, this is great. Awesome. Well, yeah, Victor, what's a question that you would have that you would want to ask our audience if they were here with you? Like, what's something that they can think about as they go about their day?
Oh, interesting. So one question I would ask though, maybe a little bit optimistic. Why you haven't tried virtual reality yet?
All
So
right.
that's my question to audience. I think the main reason is, it's a cool technology. So I wonder why people haven't tried it themselves.
Yeah.
Um, so this is something for them to think. And definitely, I would suggest them to try it out when they have chance.
Yeah, no, that's a great point and a great question. And what's funny is that I'll answer, at least for me, is it didn't seem necessary, but until now, I actually had a conversation with my wife like a week or so ago. I was like, hey, I think we should just get VR glasses and like just
Yeah.
try it out. We should, like, why not? Like the world's changing. So yeah, I love to hear what people have to say with that. Well, Victor,
Even though it's
oh, go
probably less accessible for most people to get those VR headsets, but it's a question you want to ask why you're not using technology that will be that bigger than an iPhone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, I think we'll obviously start seeing like, AR headsets or glasses. There's been a couple of hints at Apple coming out with some AR stuff. It's definitely going to be a part of what we're doing. So if you're in technology or you are a technologist, you're right. You probably should be thinking about that in some way, shape, or form.
yeah, for sure.
Victor, what are some good ways that people can stay in touch with you or follow you overall?
Yeah, I think both with Twitter, that would be the only one place I usually publicly, like communicate.
Perfect. What's your Twitter handle?
It's VikMeUp. It's VikMuup.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Victor, thank you so much for taking the time to have this interview with me. We were talking about having you up here for one of our recent conferences, and sorry, obviously we couldn't do that, but I'm glad we got a chance to catch up here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And maybe next time we might do it in VR. Who knows?
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool. I'm definitely gonna explore it. I'll definitely explore the VR. Everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of the TF podcast. Please make sure that you are subscribed on whatever channel that you're listening to this on. And also, please give us a review. Let us know what you think, good or bad. Fill in those stars, and we'd appreciate if you could share this with your friends and colleagues. You can follow me at JG Product on Twitter, and you can learn more about what we're doing at tflabs.io. Thanks so much, and we'll see y'all soon.